Hi, this is Steve Bonaconci from Angular Orange giving you a tutorial today on routing. Okay, so what is routing? Routing is, let's suppose you have an application and you have an Angular application, which is denoted in the light blue. And let's say I put a header and a footer, and I have, let's say, a center page within the application. So I basically have three tags: header, footer, center, and I have the Angular application template. Okay, and in my center view, I defined something called a router outlet. And in that router outlet, I want to be able to click on a router link. Let's suppose it's home, and I want to render something inside that particular markup fragment called home view. First of all, I'm using something which is referred to as a primary route, and basically as I click on these router links, I could basically just point to different component templates and render them inside this router outlet. So there's a concept of a primary route, and of course, if I click on a different router link, let's suppose it's chat, I could show a chat view. And like I said, I have a home component template, I have a chat component template, and I say point to these different URLs. I'm just pointing to different components, and the router outlet will show the template of my component, and that's my dog. Then we have the concept of a child route, which means in my home template I have another router link, and I define another router outlet, and in there, when I click on that child router link, it shows a child view inside the child router outlet. And then we also have something called an auxiliary route, which basically allows me to show one component in one route and then show that component with another component in an auxiliary route. So in this particular example, on the home page, it defaults to the home view component in the router outlet, but I also define an auxiliary router outlet, and when I click on chat, it opens up that component. It doesn't necessarily open it, it renders that component inside that auxiliary outlet. Okay, so there's two different location strategies. In the old world, we had the hash-based strategy, which was never happy with. I always wondered whether SiteMinder would have problems with the URL involving a hash symbol, and there was a lot of things that were not nice about it. But the thing that was good about it is you can basically have a URL, and you could, which was made up of a protocol, a domain name, a port number, and then which is really pointing to the server, the location on the server, and everything after the hash symbol was the location on the client. So you have the products, the page, and the three, which basically points to a route path and a routing parameter. And we did a lot of this with Angular 1 using routing parameters, and it's very similar to what you might see with Angular 1. But now we have the default, which is a history API-based navigation, and that you just define the base href equal to, let's say, / in the header of the index.html, or you can define an app base ref in the root module as a provider, and that would mean you do not have to use the hash symbol. Okay, so in the router module, there's building blocks, right? You got a router, which is a runtime router, which means that that object, you have a navigate function and a navigate by URL function you could use to navigate throughout your application. You have a router outlet, a directive that defines placeholder within the web page where the router should render the component. It looks like this, router-outlet. And all you have to do is put that in your page, and that's where the components templates would render. Then you got a routes object, which is an array of routes that maps URLs to components to be rendered inside the router outlet. And you have a router link, which is a directive for declaring a link to a route, and it can contain parameters. And you have an activator route. It's an object that represents a route or routes that are currently active. You could actually interrogate that for the parameters, and you could ask it for its data, and you'll see some of that in some of the examples. Okay, so once again, this is what it might look like in a web page. You have an app root, you have the root component, which is app-root selector. You have a page, you have a navigation with router links, link 1 and link 2 in your navigation component. You have a menu on the left, which we won't talk about much, and you have a router outlet on your right, and that's where the components will get rendered when you click on router links. And then you have a footer tag there. So when you design an Angular application, you put markup fragments in different places, and you basically point to component templates and have them magically appear in the router outlet. Okay, so routes have a route interface, and this is in the interface. What you'll find is you're always pointing to a path and defining its corresponding component. You want to point to URL and say which component to render. But there's other attributes of the route interface, things for lazy loading, like the load children route. And there's these can activate child, can deactivate, can load. There's different handlers you can do to prevent users from navigating to the component or do actions as the user navigates away from a component. And then there's data, which can be shared, data that can be provided to the component. And there's an array of child routes. Just you can define children and load children, defining using children components and stuff like that, and child routes or whatever. Okay, and that's all I wanted to talk about in this tutorial. I do have a code tutorial which I'll share with you as well.